Let's go. All right. I'm sorry to be so rude, but we ran about 10 minutes late. I want to apologize for our video problems with Jeb Barzin with the International Crane Society. We had it working this morning, and apparently it's a problem with his end, and they're trying to get in touch with him by email and phone, and they're not able to get in touch with him. So if we can, and maybe we could just hear the audio of his presentation, we'll add it later, and we're going to go ahead and start with the next person that wants to speak. But I do want to state that Mr. Barzin sent us a very informed 14-page email that all of the commission has read. In fact, I've read it twice, so I felt pretty sure what I knew that he was going to point out, and he had some very good information. But I'm sorry that we were not able to work that out, because like I said, I think we feel like it's from his end. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Chairman Teague.
Thank you, Chairman McMillan. Next, I'd like to recognize Vicki Henderson. Vicki.
I need some help with how to do this. Thank you. And then how do I make it go forward? There's the right click. Okay. Or left click. Okay. Chairman McMillan, Ed Carter, and Director Carter, excuse me, and commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. My name is Vicki Henderson. I live in Knoxville. My background is in behavioral science, human behavior, and I have been in that field for 37 years. I'm also representing the Tennessee Ornithological Society. I'm a member of their Conservation Committee, and I'm going to forget everything I'm supposed to say, okay? Conservation Policy Committee, and a co-chair of the Knoxville chapter's Conservation Committee. The Tennessee Ornithological Society is the oldest, and we refer to it in more easy terms as TOS. It's the oldest conservation organization in Tennessee. It's founded in 1915. It's an independent, nonprofit, educational, and scientific organization devoted to the study and conservation of birds. Our membership consists of both hunters and non-hunters. We support regulated hunting. We do not support the sandhill crane season. The eastern population is a distinct population of sandhill cranes. It was nearly extirpated in the 1900s, and by 1930s, we only had about 25 breeding pairs that were known in Wisconsin, which was the known breeding area. This is, the eastern population is the greater sandhill crane species. It gradually recovered because of regulated hunting, because of wetland conservation, and because the cranes themselves adapted to eating in waste grain fields instead of prairies, and also they adapted to smaller territories. The comparison between the mid-continent population and the eastern population, the mid-continent is made up mostly of lesser sandhill cranes, although there are some greater sandhill crane subspecies mixed in. There's about 650,000 of these cranes in the mid-continent population. These are the cranes that you're hearing about that have been hunted for many years. They've been hunted for 50 years by 13 states. And they are a smaller species. They're about, it looks like about a foot smaller than the greater sandhill cranes that we have here. We have approximately 87,000 birds in our population. These birds come down a narrow funnel corridor in the flyways, Mississippi and Atlantic flyways. The first time they were hunted is when Kentucky opened their season in 2011. And that was a 3-year experimental hunt, and they'll be in their 3rd year this year. This is, of course, the greater sandhill species. They're much larger, and they're about 4 feet tall and have a wingspan of 6 to 7 feet. This is a map of the flyways. And what you can see is in the mid-continent flyways, there's a very wide distance that these birds migrate. They're not crowded together. In the eastern flyway, we have one funneled area that comes down through Tennessee. The sandhill crane matures very slowly. It takes 5 to 7 years for a sandhill crane to reach breeding age. They usually lay 2 eggs and only 1 chick survives. They have a very, as Jeb will tell you if we have an opportunity to hear what he has to say, they have a low recruitment rate, and they've been studying the ecology of the breeding ecology of the cranes for 20 years in Wisconsin. And typically, they had an average of 0.39 chicks survive to fledging or migration age. Recently, the studies are showing, since 2012, that only about 10% of the chicks in the nesting territories survive to fledge and migrate. So it's the productive rate of the population is declining. Sandhill cranes migrate in family groups. The chicks are dependent on their parents for 10 months, and it's during migration that they learn the migration route, they learn safe roosting, and they learn how to forage. I'm not an ornithologist, and these maps were created by Melinda Welton, who you already know. But it shows, I've heard it said in the press that the population is exploding and that it's like doubling in numbers and so forth. In actuality, the population is only gradually increasing, and you can see why. With the production rate they have, there's really not going to be any explosion. They are long-lived, and they produce very slowly. What you see here is a comparison between the Christmas bird count and the bird counts that are done in the winter survey by TWRA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I've got a pointer. This is the actual count, and this is a correction line. And if I say this wrong, one of the scientists in our group can correct me. But this shows the actual gradual increase of the population. This spike that you see here was explained as possibly weather-related. This is in 2010. But it also is described by Jeb Barzan as an increase in effort to count. So what you see is a combination of effort and increase, which makes it look like a huge spike in the population. So here's a comparison of the counting method that's been consistent throughout many years, and this is a comparison of improvements in counting method. And basically, I'm just showing you this just to show you that the population is only gradually increasing. It's not overwhelmingly increasing. On the issue of need for management, we see a steady growth in the population, and there's no need to, there's been no reason described in science that says this population needs to be reduced. They're long-lived and slow-producing, as I previously stated. And there's also no description of crop depredation that actually points to the need to reduce the population. We've had 24 complaints from 1996 to 2010. This came from TWRA data. I'm sorry it didn't get in my slide. Only one depredation permit was requested in 2011 and one in 2012. Whooping cranes were reintroduced to the east in 2001. Hiwassee, the ultralight-led migration came through the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge and stayed over at the refuge for 9 years. And then they moved further west to avoid the mountains. We still have direct autumn, back up. These birds that came through for 9 years know this migration route very well, and they still come through the Hiwassee Refuge. We also have a direct autumn release population of juveniles that are released in Wisconsin, and they follow sandhill cranes and whooping cranes on their migration route. And they invariably come through Hiwassee because it's one of the biggest staging areas midway through the migration. There are 102 whooping cranes. Well, it's either 102 or 104. I've seen two different numbers, but approximately the maximum would be 104 whooping cranes in the reintroduced population in the east. One bird in this population, the loss of one bird, equals the equivalent of 10% of that population. They're designated as non-essential experimental. Is my math wrong? I'm not surprised. So what would that be? It would be what? 1%. Oh, 1%. That's better. Okay, thank you. They're designated non-essential experimental, and the reason for that, of course, is so states have the decision-making right to protect the birds and also make decisions about hunting. Whooping cranes and sandhill cranes mingle and are concentrated at the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge. Juveniles of both species have similar brown plumage. You're looking at two juveniles, and one is a whooping crane and one is a sandhill crane. This is the sandhill crane juvenile. It's a late juvenile, and this is a whooping crane. And here's some more images. You can see if you can pick out the whooping cranes. You know, and in our case, sometimes you see more juveniles than you actually see the mature white birds. Those are the easiest to pick out, but the juveniles in different types of light, they're going to sort of look the same. This is the whooping crane, and this is a whooping crane. And this is a very young sandhill crane here. These are all juveniles. And here's an image that was taken at the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge. And you can see they all sort of blend into the grass, and it's very hard to distinguish them. They are different colors if you're looking at a photo like this, but if you're out in the refuge, it's harder. Hold on just a minute. The average number for the past 5 years, an average of 14 whooping cranes were found in the vicinity of the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge. And I included in the vicinity Bradley, Hamilton, Meigs, and Ray counties because the hunt is going to be outside the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge, and these cranes can move very quickly from one area to the other. This chart that you're seeing on the slide, and let me also say that those numbers varied from 9 to 24. And the period we used, this came from the Whooping Crane Eastern Partnership data, their database, and the actual range was from 9 to 24 whooping cranes. And the period we used was from December to late January. In this chart that you're seeing on the screen, it shows the actual number of whooping cranes during the dates that are identified on the chart. And I gave the text of the presentation to the commissioners so you could each see these graphs later when you have more time. The sandhill crane is our premier watchable wildlife species. In 2011-2012 period of time, we had 7,500 visitors to the Hiwassee gazebo to view the sandhill cranes. That counted 4,500 during the periods indicated, the winter months from November to February, and also that adds 3,000 visitors to the Sandhill Crane Festival. The Tennessee Sandhill Crane Festival is a 22-year tradition. It's actually the oldest wildlife festival that we have in the state. The festival realized $232,200 in direct economic impact in 2012. There is actually a more complex calculation that can be done that's still pending, and this is from Dr. David Aborn at the University of UT Chattanooga. In a survey that he did, the sample showed that 59% of the people that attended the festival were outdoor enthusiasts and 18% were birders. TOS, Tennessee Ornithological Society, raised $25,000 in funds to support the festival, and they realized a profit of $17,000. Together, TWRA and TOS created the Tennessee Crane Fund, which is a special fund that's under the TWRA, what is the name of it? It's the foundation, yeah. TWRA's foundation. This is a special fund within the foundation. That $17,000 went into the Crane Fund. The Crane Fund specifically addresses research, promotion, and the needs of sandhill cranes and whooping cranes. $4,500 of that fund was awarded in 2013 to land management at the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge to help plant crops. TOS has done a lot of other things in the 2 years since this issue has come up before. One of those contributions was $85,000 in matching funds toward the purchase of the 68 acres acquisition for the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge. In addition, we've created, it came directly out of the festival, we created an the teachers asked for a coloring book, so we created an activity book for children. That book has been reprinted 3 times. We've printed over 4,000, 2,500 of those have been distributed. These are all donated to schools, and we actually go into the schools and teach the children about wildlife, specifically birds, and they're both game and non-game birds. This activity book has now been put on the Watchable Wildlife website, and it's available to anyone free. And it has some interesting activities that are science-based activities for the kids. Hunting and crane viewing. Hunting and wildlife watching coexist successfully in Tennessee. The exception is sandhill cranes. Sandhill cranes are concentrated in and around the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge, and the area that is designated for hunting is close to the wildlife viewing area. And wildlife watchers come, as you see in these charts, they come all the way from November to the end of February to view sandhill cranes. Nebraska realizes $30 million annually from sandhill crane viewing and does not have a sandhill crane season. I've heard that income for the state is second only to Cornhuskers football. So here's the review. In the science area, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has said that the eastern population can be hunted without negative impact to the population. If I'm standing too close to that. There is no described need for management due to crop depredation or population numbers. There is no recommendation for or against hunting sandhill cranes inherent in that science. A group of sportsmen want a new hunting opportunity. This is a social and emotional component. A group of sportsmen want a new hunting opportunity. There's no tradition of sandhill crane hunting in Tennessee. This is a new opportunity, not one that they will be losing. Opposition evokes a strong emotion in response. Wildlife watchers do not want sandhill cranes to be hunted in Tennessee. Tennessee has a 22-year tradition of celebrating sandhill cranes as a watchable wildlife species. The proposal to hunt sandhill cranes evokes a strong emotion in that group. Here's what the law has to say. It says the ownership and title to wildlife is vested in the state. The ownership and title to all forms of wildlife within the jurisdiction of the state, as are not individual property under the laws of the land, is hereby declared to be in the state. This means that no individual citizen owns any wildlife. Rather, every citizen of Tennessee owns equally every individual population, species of wildlife, game and non-game. Every citizen has a right to express their concern about the welfare of wildlife in Tennessee and to request consideration of these concerns. And this is also reflected in TWRA's mission statement, which of course says to preserve, conserve, manage, and protect and enhance for the benefit and enjoyment of the citizens of Tennessee. Now the compromise. This is a term we've heard, and this is a difficult point of the issue. A compromise is usually considered something midway between the two or more different things, or a settlement by concessions. These two things, it's hard to find something in between hunting and non-hunting because it's sort of a black and white issue. Sometimes the concessions lie outside the two extremes. In 2000, I put all my references on the text and not on the charts. In the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Outdoor Recreational Survey, in 2011 in Tennessee, there were 375,000 hunters who spent $494 million, 2 million wildlife watchers that spent $943 million. And out of 2.6 million participants in wildlife-related activities, 15% were hunters and 76% were wildlife watchers. This is a national trend that has been recognized in recent research and published several times in the Wildlife Society Bulletin and of course, in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife National Survey. So I'm just going to summarize what we know, and certainly Darrell shed some light on the information, on the comments that TWRA received. I assumed they were Tennesseans, and that's obviously not correct, but 62% of Tennessee citizens are not in favor of this hunt. 82.7% of the comments received were opposed to the proposed season, and 35% of hunters are not in favor of this hunt. And for me, that poses a real opportunity to the commission. It's a difficult decision. It's a highly visible issue, and it gives the commission an opportunity to make a strong statement to the citizens of the state that you're interested in the views of all the citizens and that you are interested in their concerns, and that you represent all Tennesseans. If you will vote no to the Sandhill crane season, in return, we, myself, TOS, and all the other conservation volunteers in the state that are opposed to this Sandhill crane issue, we will work very hard for the next 3 years to rally these people, to rally the entire state in support of additional funding for the organization to help offset the decline of hunting revenues. It is our commitment to do this. I've already made this commitment to your chief of biodiversity. I know 2 other strong volunteers who've made an equally strong commitment. We would like to rally hunters and non-hunters together to build additional revenues for our conservation and wildlife protection in Tennessee. And I hope you will join me in that commitment. Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, do you have questions?
If you have a question, I'd rather wait till we got done and just, if you write them down, we can, because they may be answered as we go forward, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to speak if we can.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions?
We'll withhold ours too, if that's okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to recognize Ken Dubke. Ken here? Yes, sir.
How long do we have to speak?
We'd like to hold them to 5 minutes if possible, but people have presentations, but, you know, as long as it's new information that we haven't heard and it's not redundant or repetitive, we'll be glad to hear it.
Okay, I'm Ken Dubke, and I'm speaking as an individual, although I have been a member of the Tennessee Ornithological Society for over 50 years. And maybe you saw me jump up, make the comment about the rails. And as say, they are hunted species. And I will say that, in fact, is one of the first areas that TWRA, in my idealism, I like to call it the evolution of a birdwatcher. Well, actually, the first effort was up in Shady Valley, if you've ever heard of Shady Valley. This is a cap that the Nature Conservancy gave me. And I was in on the original effort to preserve the cranberry bog in Shady Valley, the highest mountain valley in Tennessee, 3/10 of an acre, and we had to raise $1,500. Now that's peanuts compared to what we're talking about today. But today the Nature Conservancy and all the people in the valley, the Conservancy has, I understand, a couple hundred acres up there now in the bogs. And as an example, and this is why I'm against the hunting of the cranes, I've come to the conclusion after many years of observation, dealing with the public day in and day out, you've got to have simple things that John Q. public can understand. In fact, I've come to the conclusion I can talk to an old dirt farmer a heck of a lot better than I can talk to these city folks, because they understand some of the things. But remember, the dirt farmer's getting older now. Okay, again, in my idealism, on the largest marsh in East Tennessee was at Amicola Highway on Chattanooga. Went over there, and by the way, we had documented Virginia or king rails. They haven't been seen in years. I got some wonderful pictures of their nests. And I led an effort with the TWRA, the other organizations, on a symposium at University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And then after many years of giving many talks, the land was transferred from Southern Railroad to the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. Now, many of you probably don't even know that you've got that urban refuge, but progress has come and it's no marsh anymore. It would have been a tremendous demonstration area. Now, the reason why I'm using these as an example, I want to stress, I have absolutely no objection to hunting. Some people get the impression I'm against hunting. Shoot the deer, shoot the quail, shoot the turkeys, the doves, you name it. But I'm the one that organized that festival over 20 years ago to show and prove that I could get people to Birchwood, Tennessee. And it's gone on ever since, up to 2005, when Dan Hicks with TWRA said he would do everything, and I haven't had anything to do with the festival since. But here's my thinking. I have no objection if you shoot 50 or 100 cranes, okay? Remember what she said, that this is the eastern population of the sandhill cranes, and you have different groups. And remember, the cranes are like the geese and swans. The young learn where to go from their parents. A hummingbird, when it's time to go, it has to go across the Gulf of Mexico. If it doesn't make it, it's in the water. When it comes back, if it doesn't make it, it's in the water. But you know, being a good hunter, you know how far the deer move, even know how far the quail, if we have any quail left. So what I am saying is, but these are big birds. They're not little rinky-dink birds that you can see, or like a rail. They're down in there someplace, we think, but they're so hard to find you can't even count them. So what I'm saying is that more money can be made by people coming to observe the cranes than shooting 50 or 100 of them. Because the way I look at it, you're going to shoot 50 or 100 times, there goes the shotgun shells. Of course, you're capitalizing on every time a box of shells are shot before you hit one. But what you're doing is disturbing them. And remember, being a good waterfowl hunter, you know, maybe you have the better things over Railfoot, but we're in East Tennessee now. And say, these birds do not come south like they used to. Now, I've seen it on the press releases, I guess TWRA, that the waterfowl and the geese were diminishing. Well, frankly, I've been following the cranes with the crane survey since it was first initiated. And also getting the hunting waterfowl figures from TWRA, Dick Hurd, when he would fly. The principal birds were the black ducks. They aren't coming south anymore. In fact, they're in bad shape, even up in New England Maritime provinces, I understand. And the geese, they used to come from James Bay. They don't anymore. You know how they got here. They got here in a box. I just talking to the old TWRA man, Tom Crawley, the other day. He said, yeah, I took part in that, bringing those things down here in a box. And remember what I told you on migration. They learn from their parents. That's why they're sitting around, including over Chattanooga State Tech, where they went and they're messing up everything and so on. And they took 100, and I guess they went and euthanized them, and 100 have already come back. So what I am saying is proposing, like Vicki said just before, we've got to come on common ground. We're all into this together. We're all going to fail. We've got to have the habitat. Like I say, I've been a member of Ducks Unlimited since 1971. And so really, what I'm saying is that how about the bobwhite quail? I listened to the bobwhite quail expert from the agency, Roger Applegate, and he gave a very dismal outlook.
Mr. Dubkey,
But-
Mr. Dubkey, Mr. Dubkey, Mr. Dubkey, I'm right here. We're in the essence of time.
Okay,
I'd like for you to wrap up your
all I'm
points so
going to
we can
say
move on.
is summary, in that we work together on restoring the bobwhite quail, and I just had Frank Duff, a neighbor up there, and I insisted, Frank, we work together, and he said, let me know. So I'm ready to go on the quail, but forget the cranes, because John Q. Public's not going to see a quail, but they will see 50 or 100 quails. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask, we're going to need a pause right now for the television thing, but I'm going to ask, unless you have a PowerPoint, we'd prefer that you'll talk here, that you can address your questions to the commission or your comments to the commission. So the only reason you'd need the podium is if you have a PowerPoint or slides or something. Is that okay? All right, and we'll get started as soon as I get the TV spot.